It's your girl Nancy Red, and this is Season 3 of Mompreneurs, where every week we celebrate beautiful Black entrepreneurs who are simultaneously amazing business moguls and awesome moms, listening to their life stories and inspiring advice. And I don't know about you, but growing up, I didn't know a lot about mental health. And once I started realizing I needed to take care of mine, it was hard finding information, in particular information that spoke to me as a Black woman. And that's where my next guest comes in. She is the queen of Black mental health, or as she wonderfully puts it, Black mental wealth. Dr. Raquel Martin is a licensed clinical psychologist. She is a professor and scientist. She's a speaker, a blogger, a TikToker. She's the host of her amazing Mind Your Mental podcast. Y'all, you gotta go listen to it right now. Her guests are phenomenal. And generally speaking, whenever I run into her on the internet or see her speak, she's just an overall inspiration and source of support and hard truths and facts when it comes to the nuances involved with caring for our mental health. So thank you for joining us, Dr. Martin. Welcome to Mompreneurs.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
It's, I have to give the disclosure because you're so smart to do that. You are a licensed mental health specialist, but you're not are or the audience's specialist, which is a really smart thing to say because you are such a person who, even though I don't know you, I've only known you through a couple of emails and watching you on the internet, but it feels like you're either like my girlfriend or my guru. The way that you come across, like the family member or friend that we all wish we had. When did you realize that you had this gift of healing?
I don't even know if it's a gift of healing. I think I do a really good job of just seeing people and making them feel comfortable. It is very much a gift. So I really appreciate that you put it that way, but I don't know, maybe I'm still kind of seeing it as a gift. I feel like the biggest gift I have is I feel like I'm approachable. I'm a very emotional person, which is such a gift. So I feel like I'm very good at reading a situation, looking at all different scenarios, and doing what therapy is meant to do. Therapy is meant to have the opportunity to have someone who is integrated, but not like over encroaching, who's connected, but still disconnected enough to be objective and provide resources. So I think the gift is just that I'm just a really emotional person, and I try to make sure I'm seeing things from different perspectives. And being a psychologist and a professor and a scientist provides you with the gift of having different perspectives. And I think one of the biggest things a lot of people are missing is perspective. Like a lot of times I hear people saying, oh, you need to go touch some grass to individuals. And that's because they need to shift their perspective a little bit because they've clearly, lost their minds, but we're working with so many different people, so many different age ranges. I'm really able to take in perspectives a lot, which helps me see situations from a different lens, which I think is helpful because a lot of people don't feel seen, especially Black people don't feel seen in mental health. And honestly, the reason why I got on social media is because I was talking to my patients about homework, and I was like, oh, use the resources afforded to you between sessions, like social media and stuff like that. And they were like, yeah, there aren't that many social media accounts that kind of break stuff down the way you do in session. And most people don't look like me. So like, you're telling me to use social media. There's no one out there. And I was like, oh, okay, well, all right. I'm gonna excuse this. I'm gonna search. And I was like, oh, okay. There were a couple, and I follow all of them, but I was like, oh, this is kind of,
oh yeah,
some of the stuff is kind of stuffy, or it wasn't the way I would do it. Like mental health and well-being and mental wealth, it doesn't have to be that complicated. I think sometimes people either go a little too toxic positivity. And I think one of my most recent posts was just like, it's okay to state that it sucks, because some stuff sucks. Like, yeah, stuff could be better. I mean, some stuff could be worse, but like, it could also be better. So, like, what's your point here? Like, this sucks. I'm not trying to talk about the positive every second. You can feel that emotion, but you don't have to stay there. And I think some of the things that make people stressed out is individuals saying stuff like, oh, it could be worse. And I'd be like, well, it could also be better, Sheila. So like, what are we talking about here? Like, what are we doing? Like, what's happening?
And I think that's a exactly the point. Like, ironically, you said, I don't know if I have a gift of healing, but I have a gift of making people feel comfortable. Well, quite frankly, being comfortable is step one, the foundation of healing,
Yeah.
right? Because I feel like that's what I mean. I feel like whatever's in my head, there's enough familiarity. Yes, you might be from Philly, but like I might be Southern, but there's enough relationship for some reason that I feel comfortable listening to the advice that you're giving
Yep.
and transforming it. And I'm very passionate about this, and I don't actually talk about this a lot. I mean, I used to. I mean, I go back and forth. But like, my father died by suicide, unfortunately, on the day that he was supposed to go to the psychiatrist, or the psychologist, to start his mental health treatment. And it was because he was a strong black man in his community, and like, that's just not something that people did, and he just didn't have any voice to it, and I don't think he felt comfortable.
Yeah.
So when I see the work that you are doing, and of course other people like you, there can never be too many, but bringing your own self to it, it's just so valuable and it's so necessary, especially in this time where there's just so much expectation or fakeness, and we're all healing from getting to the point where we're on social media and we are professional people. It's a lot.
It is a lot. And one, I'm so sorry you experienced that loss. Two, one of the things I try to do every single day is make Black people in the community, like he, she, and they, feel seen. Because I think not only is it the fact that like there are these misconceptions about mental health, but I don't think most people know like the suicide rate for Black individuals has been increasing steadily since I believe 2019. And I'll also take it one step further as someone who also works with youth. I think that we'll never get the data points right, like accurate in terms of the percentages of individuals who have suicidal ideation, because with certain groups, like with certain age groups, I don't think they see it as suicidal, but their thought process of not like seeing anything helpful in the future as taking on these like risks and these difficult, like taking on these just poor choices because it's just like, okay, well, I don't really care what happens to me. I don't really care about a future. Any clinician would objectively state that they're having like passive ideation. And I always feel like with the Black community, we're never going to actually get the data 100% right when it comes to the rates of suicide ideation, because like I've engaged with people and they're talking about these risk-taking behaviors and not wanting, not seeing a purpose to like caring for themselves or caring for their bodies or being like, I don't care what happens to me. And I'm like, any clinician would be like, if they were in session, would be like, okay, so you don't find a purpose to living. You're just going to take on things as it goes. You don't see a future for yourself. That sounds like ideation. And for so many people in the Black community, that's how people are feeling, like with not being seen. And then you try to find a clinician, they don't look like you. You're consistently being invalidated. And even when you mention the strong
having
Black
to explain,
like it's just like the best thing about social media is I'm able to provide psychoeducation, because I'm always just like, this is a therapy. Unless you receive an invoice from me, like, I'm not about to lose my license because I'm an actually licensed doctor. Like
correct.
I do my continuing education. I pay my fees. I take my tests. I use my license. I ain't about to explain to my husband how I lost my darn job on social media. But like, I provide psychoeducation and it's centered in the Black experience. Like I always state that, like, if you're not a Black person, that doesn't mean that my platform isn't for you at all. But I do want you to understand that it may be helpful for you, but the priority will always be Black people. And just stating it that way. And so when people come in here, what about other people? Just a heads up. I've always stated that this platform prioritizes Black people, he, she, and they. And when I say Black people, I don't mean only Blackness that mirrors my own. I mean Black people, right? Because also, I think one of the structures that happens with Black people in that sense is that Black people can be anti-Black as well. They're only Black excellence is that fits into this one box. And Black excellence is only seen as somebody with like all this money, instead of like Black excellence can be the fact that like I go to sleep at an appropriate time. I care for myself. When I want to relax, I relax. I think Black excellence is the fact that I got a bunch of books in my house and my ancestors wouldn't even be allowed to have a house, let alone read the books. I think that it's just very stressful. And I try to make sure people are seen in my platform, like when it comes to women and men and non-binary Black people, because I always tell Black women to burn the cape of Superwoman syndrome. I also want to state that like Black men wear capes too. Like men feel like they're not seen, or they feel like they're only as good as the things that they can provide. And what about their emotional reasoning and all that? And I just try to make sure, from my podcast to my research to even my courses, that Black people feel seen. And I check it on my social media. Everyone says don't read the comments. Well, how am I supposed to know if that made sense to the people who watch the video? Like I'm not that person who doesn't read the comments, because it can help me. I could be like, oh, everyone got confused by this. I'm gonna do another video to clarify. Comments help me.
Well, the thing is, you have to understand, you're like the Matrix. You have the training.
Yes.
To go in and out, right? Which is hard. We all want to talk about how you stay healthy and okay yourself, because Lord, it's a lot that you have to deal with. But what's interesting though, is you say, everyone says don't read the comments. That's because everyone is trying to quote unquote protect you.
Yeah.
You are protected by your decade plus of education.
Oh yeah.
and you understand where people are coming from. That doesn't make it hard, but it makes it easier to sift through and find what the disconnect is. If only we all could do so.
Yeah, because I think a lot of times people will focus on followers, but I call the people I call them my community. I don't even say followers, but like I focus on like the community aspect of it. So even like when people are saying ridiculous stuff, it's never people in my community. And since they're my priority, I'm like, I don't give a flip with you. I don't know you. Now, people in my community will ask questions and clarifying things, and they have some sense. But anyone who says some ridiculous stuff, like being from Philly, my husband always says, like, you a different breed, because people say ridiculous stuff to you. And I legit just crack up. Like, it can be the most absurd thing, and I'd be like, that's weird. Like, I don't know you. And you're not my key community member. Like, you're not someone who's actually trying to get mental health or well-being. So it's kind of just like, well, hi, you wanted to be seen. I've acknowledged you. Have the day you deserve. And from what you just commented, I don't think you deserve a good one. So you should watch out for that one. But okay,
step one, I feel like that's a t-shirt. Have the day you deserve. Go on and trademark it.
Because because you need to realize that, you know what, you put out what you get in. Like, my mom is a Christian and my dad is a Buddhist. And they're married. So like, I've always seen, and I'm a person who, spiritual, but I also just stay away from the Big Ten, like the Big Ten Commandments. Like, when it comes down to it, as long as I'm aligned with the Big Ten, I think I'm being a good person. But I think people need to realize you put out what you get in. So somebody telling you have the day you deserve, well, you got to think, do you deserve to have a good day with the way you've been acting? Well, that's a choice, was it not? Maybe you could work on that. I'm not going to tell you to have a nice day. I don't know if you deserve a nice day. I really don't.
And this is why you need to be on this podcast, and why we need you in these streets, because it is a very difficult journey. And in particular, you mentioned like one of the tenets. You speak to all Black people, and in the ways we need to be spoken to. And burning the superhero cape is one of your facets, right? But it's interesting because then when you don't have on the superhero cape, as those of us who are doing the deep work to figure out who we are, to unpack a lot of the elements that you talk about all the time, from respectability politics and beyond, then you end up naked. So I'm over here naked, and if I don't have the cape on, what do I do? And in particular, this is a difficult journey for moms. In particular, because often we are caring for people, running our own work and business, and trying to do the deep work of healing, or at least not fall apart.
It's so much, because to be honest, I had two my delivery with my second was way more difficult. I was like partially paralyzed at one point. I had a bunch of spinal surgeries. Like, it was very scary. And with him, I remember experiencing more anxiety. With my first, I remember experiencing more anxiety because he was my first. And I'm just like, I remember telling my husband, trying to explain to him, like, when he cries, I can't think. Like, my heart rate increases. Like, I can't focus on anything. And you're putting on pants before you go to the crib. Go get him before I hurt you. I'm just like, what are you doing? Why do you need pants?
Okay,
what do you need pants
for? People who don't know what she's talking about, like, I can be in the middle of urinating, and if I feel my child is in trouble, I will just go mid-pee. You know what I mean?
Like, can't function.
You know, like,
it's evolution. Like, people are always like, oh, women are so excessive. No, our body literally responds to them. You have a scientist right here. Our heart rate increases. It's the evolution of what keeps them alive, right? And this man over here putting on pants, I'm like, we live in the house alone. Go get my child before I kick you out. I'm not playing with you because I can't think straight. Like, I cannot think straight. And it's the thing that keeps them alive. But I do want to clarify that sometimes women, they'll have this mindset of like, well, you guys are natural caretakers. No, we're not. Because none of us are born as caretakers. Our body may respond differently. But like, we learn tricks in terms of like, my husband realized when he cries, when I couldn't focus. So we lived in a townhome. He took him to the third floor and I'll be on the first. Because it's like, it's not the fact. It's like, if I don't hear him crying, I can finish reading this book. Because I need to trust that you can, the thing is, I just need you to know I can't hear it, you know? So if I don't hear it, I'm just imagine it's not happening, right? But being a mom and trying to do work and be an entrepreneur, I feel like it's a significant amount of stress because the mindset of caring for your children, and also I'm a very big proponent of my children they're not my entire world. Like they're a galaxy. Like we have a galaxy and they're one of the planets that are in the orbit, but they're not my entire world. And it's incredibly healthy for women to realize that it's not appropriate for them to be your entire world, because when you put all that on your children and you feel like you put everything into them, and then they start with their autonomy and their own life, you end up naked, like you mentioned, right? And children also need to see parents prioritize things other than them, because I've said this a million times. We have all met that person who like has never had any scenario where they weren't the priority, and they're kind of jerks. It's kind of absurd, and like we're rearing children, so it's just like we need to see. You met that person who's just like, what do you mean the world doesn't revolve around me? Oh my god!
And it's easy to raise them by accident by not giving them examples.
By not walking away. You know, every time me and my husband go on a date night,
not informing. I was just about to use the date night example. Tell me everything.
Every time me and my husband go on a date night, my son is like, "Where are you going?" "Oh, we're going out. We're gonna go on a date night." "I want to go." "Well, I can understand that, but we spent all day with you, and Mama likes to spend time with Dada alone, so we're gonna go by ourselves." He's like, "Well, I want to go," and I said, "Thank you for sharing that with me." Let me tell you something. Every time my sons say something that's not going to change, but I really want to appreciate the fact that like, and I want them to keep telling me, because they don't know what stuff will change or things like that. Like they could tell me, "I don't want to brush my teeth." And it's just like, "Oh, you're going to brush your teeth either way." But they could also tell me, "Oh, I don't want to eat this sandwich," and I can provide them with the alternative. So I don't want to shut them down, because I'll never really know until they say something, whether there's an alternative. So anytime they say something, I just say, "Thank you for sharing that with me." Now, if it's not going to change, it's just going to be like "Thank you for sharing that with me. Go brush your teeth."
Thank you for sharing that with me.
But if it's something I can change, it'll be something like, "Oh, okay, well, if you don't want this sandwich, we got leftover pasta, I'll make you some pasta." But if we continuously, like, if we shut them down and stuff like that without letting them use their voice, you never know what they're going to bring, because you provide alternatives. So typically when it's something that's not going to change, I still say, "Thank you for sharing that with me. Go brush your teeth."
I think it's fair. And go brush your teeth. And my whole thing is like, I hear you, but I'm going to be honest with you. You're going to be real upset with yourself in that dentist chair getting these cavities drilled.
Yes.
So if you think it's annoying to brush your teeth, I'm saying I gave you the tools you needed. I gave you the toothbrush. Now you hear with this drill.
Yes. And Nancy, you mentioned it perfectly, because you're starting off with, "Thank you that, I hear you," right? Like you're letting them know that you hear them. And I'm like, I hear you. It's not changing, but I do want you to know your voice matters, because I heard it. Get out of here, though, and brush your teeth, because you're a close talker. This is already too much for me. All right? Like, so it's just like, "Thank you for sharing that with me, honey, sweetie." But but mental health wise, like we have to prioritize other things. And I've worked with parents where they felt like they put everything into their children, and then their children leave, and there's some aspect of resentment. And they're like, "I sacrificed everything for them." And I'm like, half the time all kids want is like some time with you and some more fruit snacks. Like they didn't ask you to sacrifice your soul for them. You know, like
No,
you.
and so much of this in the Black community sometimes is our nervousness about it being a zero-sum game. Like we might not have grown up
Yeah.
with the treatment we wanted, right? So we're looking to create with not all the information or no role model like you, the life, but we're just going off of magazines and Instagram posts and not the real life of being a human being in our household. And so this gentle parenting movement you can be a gentle parent and not be a pushover. I remember because I started off, really trying to just be all about. I mean, I went all in on these kids. Like many opportunities were sacrificed. I'm still healing from that.
We all
And
are.
my mom said, "We all are." My mom said to me one day, she said, "You cannot let these children run over you. What is this?" And I say that because I see the modern. I think, they were different. That was respectability politics.
Mhm.
That was, authoritarian parenting.
Mhm.
And I see you as like a modern understanding of the best of that and the best of 2024.
Yeah. I try to make it like I treat my children like human beings, like and some of the most simplest things are they're really one of the things I do want to tell parents is like, yes, it is harder to rear your children out of respect. I'm gonna be real with you. It very much is. Rearing your children using obedience and like fear, that's easy. It's easy to make your children fear you. We're bigger than them. We have all the control. Like that's easy. I will say that's not going to build a relationship. Like obedience builds fear, respect builds relationships. So every single time people were like, whether it's gentle parenting or conscious parenting, I just treat my child like a human being. I'm just like, you think it's easy for me to apologize? You think it's easy for me to have a conversation with someone whose clothes I still fold? No, it's easy for me to pop them and have them be quiet and not have to deal with their noise anymore. It's harder for me to acknowledge the fact that like, sometimes I'm wrong and I need to work on that. Acknowledge the fact that I'm rearing a human being who I want to have a relationship with and I want them to understand how they should be treated. It's harder for me to slow down and regulate myself so I can co-regulate my children. Like it's easy to like put your hands on your kids. It's easy to like rear them out of fear. It's harder to build respect with your children, right? I saw this one quote with someone who was just like, "Oh, you only have 18 summers with your children." I said, "You treat your children like trash. You probably only got 18 summers. My mom is downstairs. We got summer. We got plans this summer. You see what I'm saying? Like
I'm right here. I'm right here in my mama's house at this exact moment.
I'm like,
because no, 100%. And I think you're spot on. So you provide a lot of tools for us
mm-hmm.
to figure this out. And I want to really quickly talk about your galaxy. Because
Yeah.
like already you've been spending knowledge. You're so great. It's very obvious why everyone should follow her. You should invite her to speak at your conferences or at your events. Whatever you can do to bring this person into your life, you need to do it. But let's talk about your galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about who in your household, who makes you a mom, and also your business.
Yes. So my husband's Brandon. I've been married to him for, I got to get better at this, but I'm not going to. I've been married to him for 7 years. We've been together for 14 years. I've been with my husband since I was 20. He's my boyfriend then, but we've been together since I was 20. And then I have a 5-year-old, Russell. I always say like, my mom is downstairs and she's always like, Russell, she calls him RJ. She's like, RJ, he's doing so well, this, and this, and like listening. And I said, that's because you get RJ. I get Russell who likes to tussle, honey. Like Russell don't play these games with me. Like, like you get RJ boo, but I get Russell. All right. And Russell, and then my 2-year-old is Jaden. Jaden, my mom always says that Jaden would crawl back inside of me if he could. I'll hold him all the time. And one time I was holding him and my husband was holding him. And, he was flipping out. So I picked him up and my mom was like, well, what's wrong? Why is he still crying? And he said, I'll show you. And I put my face next to his face and he stopped crying because me holding him was not enough. He had to be touching my face. So yes.
That just seems like the simultaneously sweetest torture. It's like the juxtaposition of I am so loved and I hate this.
Everyone who sees like the boys, they're like, oh my goodness, you're clearly the favorite. And I always say like being the favorite parent is not the flex that you think it is. My husband has meals hot, You know what I'm saying? Like, he comes in the house, they'll say hi, but then they just crawl back up under me. And he tries, like, he will literally, he will be like, leave her alone. Leave her alone. Like, but they're just like, don't leave me with this man. Who is this man I live with? I barely know him. Leave me alone. You know, like, so.
But you know, it shifts. It shifts. As someone, I have an almost 13-year-old son, and I have a 10-year-old daughter, and it flips and flops all the time. But that doesn't make the moment in which you can't even go to the bathroom without like a tether any easier.
Yeah.
So okay, so you've got this 2-year-old. You've got and you said this was a difficult birth and recovery.
Yeah, it was really bad. So with my oldest, I actually, and nobody out here do it. This is a perfect example of how you have to get your mental health right. I finished my dissertation, walked off the stage, went to the hospital and delivered my first. And I'm
so sorry. On graduation day?
No, not on graduation. I didn't even go to my graduation. I can't stand graduation. Just give me my
okay. So, but you walked off the stage.
Oh,
where
for my
dissertation.
Did the stage go? My dissertation. You know that like 100-page document.
I'm sorry.
So I defended.
where you have to defend your dissertation
in front of like the department and all these people, and I'm just like, you know, all right, y'all, it's been real. I answered your questions. I have to go have a baby, and I was actually, the doctor wanted to induce me earlier, and I was like, no. And she was like, what? I said, yeah, my dissertation is that day. I'm not doing that. And she was like, ma'am, you know, like, just health-wise. And I said, doctor to future doctor, don't do this to me, okay? If I delay this dissertation, they're going to come up with another analysis. You know how hard it is to get all these doctors in the same room? If you do this to me, I'm never going to graduate. And, you know, I totally understand it's unhealthy. And I was just like, I was talking to my husband, and I was like, what's she going to do? I'm not going to show up. What's she going to do? Like, what? So, like, I said, for the safety of my child, can we push it back a couple days? She said, yes. I said, okay. Compromise. You know what I'm saying? I'm just asking to compromise, boo, because I need to graduate. And I remember seeing this recently about someone who was, like, doing their dissertation after they gave birth. And as someone who also did something similar, it's a really unhealthy decision. I never tell anyone to do that. Everyone was like, oh, that's amazing. It's a terrible decision. It's because I was so fearful of remaining in this racist academic environment that I was willing to like sacrifice my health for a little bit just to get out. So it's not healthy. And he had IUGR, so they wanted him out a little bit earlier so he could have food. He's fine. It's actually one of the reasons why I stress out about their food all the time now. My youngest, I wanted to do like I wanted to try to deliver him without having a cesarean, and he just wouldn't progress, which makes sense because we were at like 38 weeks. So it's just like some of the stuff, just as a scientist, the doctors will be saying stuff and I'll be like, yeah, I mean, yeah, it is going to be tough because like he's not supposed to come out. So I'm not surprised that he didn't progress, but they had a really difficult time doing an epidural, and eventually we had to go to a cesarean, and they couldn't place the tap. And they were trying, and it's like the worst pain in life. And they were trying with Russell too. It was also an issue. And at one point they were like, with Russell, they said, oh, we might have to put her under. And I stopped crying for 2 seconds. And I said, you will not put me under for the birth of my first child. You need to figure it out. And then I went back to crying, and I'll wait. I said, I'll wait. Just give me a minute, because you're not going to knock me out for the birth of my first child. And then for Russell, for Jaden, they eventually got it. But when they were leaning me back to start the procedure, I couldn't feel my arms. And then I couldn't feel I was just like, I can't feel my arms. And while they were leaning me back, like I just was losing feeling. And I have been crying so much, this is going to be gross, but I was crying so much, you know, when you cry, you have like snot and stuff like that. And like when they laid me back, like the it was like went to my throat. So I was just like I was trying to say anything, and I was looking at my doctor, and I realized I wasn't talking because I was paralyzed. And when they were leading me back, my last words before they laid me back was just like, I can't breathe. I don't want to die. And it was just very stressful. Apparently nobody was telling my husband anything, because, you know, they let the husbands wait outside to come inside. No one was telling him anything. All he sees is the window. He sees people running. He sees like the doctor on the phone looking stressed. No one's talking to him. He was scared that entire time too, because he didn't know what was going on. And then I just remember just feeling like my voice wasn't happening, and it's just very scary. Like, I also have a psychologist, but I remember just resolutely being like, oh, this is it. I'm dying like this, because no one could hear me. And then I woke up and I see my husband holding my son, and they were like, yeah, it was a wet tap and something about like being partially paralyzed. And then I had to have all these other procedures because I was still in pain afterwards. But dealing with that, I didn't have as much anxiety with my first as I did with my first. I had more depressive things because, you know, you have children and, you know, you have all these perceptions and stuff for yourself, and you can't think straight. I remember thinking like, I'm a scholar and I haven't read a book, or like thinking, is this all I'm going to do for the rest of my life is wipe butts? Or thinking like, I haven't slept through the night. I'm never going to be able to like go back to my career that I love. Like, because this is it. Like, I can't think straight. And I remember feeling more sad about that. Like with Russell, I was more anxious because I was just like, what am I going to do with this baby? I'm at home all day. Like, what is this life? And I was more anxious. But with my second, I was just like, oh, this is crazy. I can't think straight. I think this is it. Like, this is the end of my career. Like, I'm never going to be able to do anything ever again. This is it.
Well, I always say one is, look, girl, you're speaking to the choir, because one is an accessory.
Yeah.
You can take one anywhere.
Yeah.
One can fit in a backpack. One can like, y'all can all fit on the same. One is easy. Two is a lifestyle.
Man.
Two is a lifestyle. And it changes the game.
It does.
But yet, here what's fascinating about you. I did not realize your youngest was so young, because
everyone says that. You're like the
because that's why I'm like, tell me more about this galaxy. Because you said two. Because it's like, because here you were just like, and also, I mean, I laugh because you reminded me, because we'll just gloss over stuff that's horrifying to other people.
Oh, yeah.
And then you just write like, I have my own psychologist. Same. Like, we're working through it, right?
Oh,
so like,
yeah.
when I'm glossing over, that's because it is now a footnote. And I'm in active care for these issues.
Yeah.
But when you just gloss over, I had all these surgeries, and, like, I was, like, losing myself, and, it was really, really hard. I'm thinking, oh, well, that must have been, like, 5 years ago. Your kids must be in school. You got a 2-year-old, and you are producing so much quality content and bopping all around. At what point did you go from partially paralyzed 2 years ago to your business, to being able to really pick up and do gangbusters with your podcast and with your outlets, and also with your teaching? Were you even on sabbatical or maternity or medical leave?
I was on. Okay, so after my dissertation, I gave birth to Russell, and then I was on maternity leave for a little bit, and I started again. Russell was born 5/29. Russell was born in May. I went back to work in October. Yes. So I was at Hopkins for my postdoc and internship. So I was at Hopkins for a couple of years. So after I had him, I went back in October. So I had like maternity leave for a little chunk of time. And then with Jaden was born in March, and I started teaching in August. I had a bit of a break. Yeah, break. What the flip? It wasn't a break. Oh my God. And sometimes you got to correct yourself. It wasn't a break.
Right.
What the heck am I talking about? I had a bit of a time off of my work outside of the home, but still very much doing the work inside the home. I teach 4 classes a semester. So I started teaching then. We live in Nashville, Tennessee. My husband's whole family is here, and we are just so lucky that his parents watch Jaden at home, and they watch Russell too, but Russell started pre-K. Such a blessing, because I wouldn't be able to do what I do if it wasn't for the fact that I knew that my children were cared for. Because even with, we had Russell, my oldest, when I was in Maryland, because I was working at Hopkins. And it was really, really difficult because I was working in family and traumatic stress. And I would have to deal with some children and families with processing the most difficult thing that's ever happened to them in life. And I would have to drop my child off in the care of someone else while caring for some, So like that was very difficult. So there's also a significant difference with parenting with Russell versus Jaden, because Jaden, when we drop him off with his grandparents, I don't have to think about anything, because they're with other, who loves them more, their grandparents. So it's very much a blessing. But with Russell, I didn't have that all the time. Like, I was actually working, and I was still very anxious. My mom actually watched him. He was in daycare part-time. He was in daycare for 3 days. My mom had him for 1 day, and then I would be home with him the other day. And the day that my mom had him was always my most productive day. I never had to worry about anything. So Russell rearing him and rearing my youngest is actually different because I was still kind of anxious for 3 days out of my work day. When my mom had him, I would just be like, I could come in early and stay late, honey. I ain't got to worry about anything. My mom got him. But it's also that anxiety of you're working and you love what you do, but like, I'm still not fully here.
And you're not only just fully here, you're fully helping people with many worst case scenarios for the most well-meaning of parents, and it actually lent a lot into the work that you currently do. Mm-hmm. So, and even if it's not, so what you see is the worst case scenario often, but there's still a lot of us just limping along. We're at 6s when we could be 10s, when we're at 4s. We're not completely falling apart like a lot of the people you see, but one of the things that you saw just as you were beginning your parenting journey, ironically, helpfully, but also horrifyingly, was what I want to talk a little bit about for our audience, in particular mompreneurs, because often mompreneurs, we're bringing our kids along for the ride, right? Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's very important that we think about a pit, or as you refer to them, traps, that a lot of loving Black parents accidentally do. Yeah. Which is the dehumanization and adultifications of our babies. Can you talk a little bit about that, what that means? Because that sounds scary. And many people are listening to this like, I don't do that. But it's a little more nuanced.
It is more nuanced. And the reason why it's so embedded specifically within the Black community is because it was done to us. Of course, like dehumanization, depriving individuals of human qualities like joy and civil rights and being able to just be and have emotions, and adultification, treating us older than we were both used as ways to justify violence against us, right? Like it was one aspect of, you can't possibly assault like Black people physically, sexually, emotionally, because they're not human. So like, yes, breeding them as animals is fine because they're not human beings, right? Oh yes, we can adultify them. Like they're 8 years old, but they should be working in fields and they should know better and they should be able to be seen and not heard, because like that's justification for the violence against us. And one thing we have to acknowledge is like that kind of stuff is embedded in us. Yes, like there were many times when people had to be in fields next to their children, or there are many times when not even fields, like we had to care for ourselves because our parents have unequal pay, so they're working longer and they don't have the ability to care for us the way we deserve because they need to make the money to be able to make sure we have a home to live in. So we're staying at home younger than we need to, or we're walking home younger than we need to, or we're caring for younger siblings earlier than we need to. As a result of the systemic aspects of oppression, right? And those things kind of get passed down. But I also want to state, like, we talk about breaking generational curses, but there's also an aspect of building generational bonds. And I very much see that the way that the Black community is doing, right? Like we talk about the fact that we have autonomy and we talk about the fact that we can do it all. And that can very much serve us in many different realms. But I also want us to look at the aspect of it also contributes to our detriment, right? So I think it's amazing that you can do everything. Why should you? Right? I think it's amazing that you can do all this stuff yourself, but why do you want to? And even acknowledging that you probably don't even want to, but you may feel so nervous about relying on other people because you can't trust them, or you relied on someone previously, and you got burned that you don't even provide people the opportunity to, right? We do this with our children too, right? Like we state that like, when it comes to emotions, dehumanizing is the fact that you're stating that you shouldn't be able to have human emotions, happiness, sadness. What are you so upset for? You got a roof over your head. Don't cry, suck it up. Like no one's hitting you. Do you want to, like people have it worse than you. You're a boy. Like you can't be over here crying. People are going to think you're weak. And that's done out of fear too, because we also don't want children. We know that our children are seen as older than they are. So we don't want them to be seen as weak, because that could be, we have a fear that someone's going to go for their jugular. So we kind of do it before the other people can do it. We kind of make sure that we're toughening them up because we know that the world is going to be tough on them. So we want them. We say we do it out of love. We want you to toughen up because no one's going to be as gentle with you as I am. And for the people who have that mindset, I always state that, like, I will never treat, and mind you, I'm surrounded by men. We have a dog. Even the dog is a male. Like 2 boys, my husband. It's just me, But I would never treat my children or my husband the way that the world does, because I think we can all, as Black people, understand that our people deserve better, right? So people will state that the world is tough, so I'm going to be tougher. I think that the world is tough, so my home is always going to be a soft space for my children to land and my husband to land, and working on doing that, right? Like, a lot of times Black children, of course, one of the things that's stolen from them are freedoms, right? Freedom to be carefree, working earlier, freedom to be able to be themselves in school. They have to, go against the stereotypes, so they have to self-correct all the time. Freedom to wear their hair the way they want. Hair discrimination starts as young as 5. Freedom to wear their clothes the way they want. People adultify the bodies of Black children to the point where you act like there's something lustful about a 10-year-old's knees. So they have to wear clothes that they're not comfortable in, right? Like, these freedoms are taken from them. One of the ways that I try to work with families and even in my home to provide that is to use opportunities to really discuss things with my children. I want my children to be so steeped, so embedded in respect and also accountability from adults as well, in critical thinking, that as soon as they're in an environment where it seems disrespectful, it seems like they're being stereotyped, it seems like there's no accountability around them, their alarms goes off because they're so used to what respect feels like, right? I want my child to get used to asking questions, because if they can't ask their most salient relationship questions, how are they going to ask questions to the person who is making them feel uncomfortable, making them feel unsafe, harming their body? If they can't question the most prominent adult in their life, you're letting them think that adults are always right. What if an adult is hurting them and they've learned not to question adults? They're not going to say anything, and they're not going to say anything to you because what they've learned is adults are always right. So I apologize to my children. I let my children know that they have consent above all, because one of the things that we can acknowledge as a community is that the consent for Black people has been repeatedly stolen and still consistently becomes stolen. And people will think that it has to be on this big range of the issue. But it's something as simple as I ask my son if he wants a hug, if I can give him a hug. I ask my son if I can give him a kiss. And I tell this story all the time. There was a smooth 3 months where my son would not let me kiss him. I would always say, can I have a kiss? And he would say no. Did I want to kiss? Yes. Did I make a big deal and emotionally manipulate him? No. I went and I cried in the corner like an adult. Okay? That's what you do. All right? Because I want him to understand that his voice matters and he has body autonomy, right? Like, you teach them that young. Something as simple as, like, can I take your picture? Can I give you a hug?
I show my kids. My kids are actors. I'm like, can I post this?
Yes.
I'm just like, I'm not trying to be in here, causing conundrums and causing issues. And the thing is, though, people see these steps as difficult. Mm-hmm. And it's just like they see, like, not doing authoritarian parenting is difficult. Like, actually, like, raising a human is difficult. I truly believe it is more difficult to not do so, because then, like you said, you end up with a broken relationship that's so much harder to heal. When I'm saying authoritarian parenting, what's hilarious about you for me, which brings me so much joy, the tone is the same tone as it's like, I am a confident, strong person, but I recognize you're a human.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's the best of all worlds. It's, you must listen to me because I am brilliant, but I am listening to you.
And even
so when I say it, yeah, you know what I mean? Because I love maturing into an older Black woman. I love my mom.
Me
I love the way
too.
the cadence of her talk.
Yeah.
I love becoming that auntie. I love being more direct.
Mm-hmm.
It's bringing me so much joy. But in my head, I've had to do a lot of thinking, because, like, it connects to authoritarian parenting, right? And it's like, but for me, I always remind my kids, I was like, I love you. You have these choices. These are the choices I think you should take, but you have your choice. I'm just going to let you know. So I laugh because it's this delicate balance, this wave of directness, mm-hmm. which is confrontational, and you should do what I say because I am likely right. But you are human, so therefore this is more gentle and conversational, whatever those other words were.
I like it as conversational, because a lot of times people will be like, oh, well, I'm loud, I'm from Philly, I'm East Coast, and I'll be like, and I don't let my kids be on the camera, but sometimes they'll be saying stuff and I'll be talking right to them. And like, I talk to them the same way. Like, we'll be doing something and I'll record something and I'll be like, sir, it's going to be a no for me. Now, you can sit down on your bottom, or you can sit down on the floor, but you cannot stand on my couch. Thank you. And I just go back to what I was doing. Like, like, I'm not screaming at, like,
there's no conversation.
Yeah, these are your choices. Make the right
like love.
one.
If there's a love.
Yes.
And there's a nuance to it. And that's what I'm trying to add. We have to, in our community, I think you are the perfect specimen of adding the layer of love to the firm and frank direction that they need to take.
Yeah, because I really just try to be like, one, it's always going to be out of love. Two, I let you know, I always tell my son the same thing. He rolls his eyes at it now. But I'll be like, what are my most important jobs? And he'll be like, to keep me healthy and safe, to keep you healthy and safe. Correct. So if I'm telling you something, it's either to keep you healthy and safe. Okay. So like, one of the things is like when we're in the parking lot, that's when he wants to have all the questions. Have the question when we get in the store, sir. I said, it's unsafe for us to be walking this long in this parking lot. You know what I'm saying? So like, I'm not saying that I don't care what you're saying. I'm saying as soon as you walk into the store, we can talk about it. As soon as we step foot in the store, okay. Thank you for waiting so patiently. What were you trying to tell me? Oh, I saw a bird. Thank you. Okay. You saw the bird.
100%. I swear I've never talked to you. I know. You did not need to talk about the bird. The bird. They talking about like, what are you talking about?
And I'm like, danger, danger, danger. Get him, store it. We're just, Target's right there. Target's right there. Let me just,
book it.
Let's step the threshold. As soon as you see the big dog, then we can have a conversation. But right now, I am trying to keep us alive, honey. Get out of, we are in the
like
street.
all synapses firing, trying to do this. And I love that because, I swear I've never talked to her before, like, in my life, but literally my entire existence with these kids is like, I'm just trying to help you live your best life.
Please.
I have no skin in this game. I have a great life. My life's great.
Yes.
I'm apart. I'm just trying to let you know that we just trying to get you out in this world healthy and happy.
And I'm like,
that's literally the goal.
It's like Nancy. It's like saying to them, like, but can you help me though? Can you give me a hand? I'm trying to provide you with a good life. Can you help me a bit by not playing with a chainsaw? Can you not be jumping off the roof? can you help me? Please.
Well, and I think infusing the humor is very important.
Yeah.
Like
I
will share this anecdote. I had permission to share the anecdote. My son was eating an avocado and he said the seeds, and he was like, I saw the pit. He said, I saw you can eat the avocado pit online. And I was like, I don't know. I need to Google that before you start eating this avocado pit because I kind of like you. I want you to stay on this earth.
Yeah.
And he was just, I really want to eat this avocado pit. I was like, please, I'm doing something. I'm going to Google about this avocado pit. And then I'm going to ask, and I'm going to tell you if you can eat it or not, but not right now. So I'm going, and I look over there. I see him eating the avocado pit. And like in that moment, I thought back to the 1980s. It would have been a thing. Get that avocado pit out of your mouth. Instead, I had a moment. I was like, all right, look, I'm be honest with you. And then also didn't want to.
I do this too.
Like, what's
I do this too. I'd be like, so here's the thing.
Be honest with you. Here's the thing. And I had to think about it because I'm very deeply embedded in the journey to not emasculate our young boys, right? And I said, I was like, it's amazing the creativity, ingenuity, the fearlessness that you have. I mean, that is what builds buildings. That is what creates roads. Yeah. That is what makes amazing things happen. However, there's a reason that there are more baby boys born than baby girls. And perhaps it could be that you don't listen to authority as much as you should sometimes. And when I'm just saying, please give it 2 minutes before you start biting into that avocado seed. Yeah. And then he walked away from that chuffed up and understand. I was just like, I'm here for it, but you got to do it healthily or safely, because if you fall ill, and then you have to take this extra time that I don't feel was taken with us as children. Yeah. I said, if you fall ill from the avocado pit and it's a Sunday on a holiday weekend and nobody has time to take care of you, you could have some kind of lifelong trauma just because you didn't listen to me. Yep. This is what we're up against. And it's not just an avocado pit.
It's never just an avocado pit. And you know what? That's an answer if like I'm not rushing and stuff. But you know what? If I'm rushing, I would have taken the pit and be like, it seems like you're having difficulty making a safe choice, so I'm gonna help you out. And I would have put it on the fridge or something. And like, so you gonna let me Google or not? Because you know what? It's just like, it seems like you're having a tough time, so let me help you. I already said you couldn't do it. You still doing it. Let me help you out. And you know what? It seems like you're having a tough time making a safe choice, making a healthy choice. So I'm going to help you make that choice, honey. And go back to what I'm doing. You know, because sometimes you got the time, and sometimes it's like, put your shoes on. We're late for basketball. They about to kick us out the league.
Yes, and then really quickly, I know we're running out of time, but just talk about the importance. Just speak to our audience about the importance of these tactics versus the POW that we may or may not have been raised with in terms of corporal punishment, physical strength taking over verbal communications, because I think that it cannot be said enough, and I think you're a perfect person to talk to people about this.
Oh yeah, and it doesn't work. And as someone who got popped.
Yeah, Okay, someone,
Listen.
yet they who have not gotten popped.
Yeah.
Throw the first pop.
Yo, honey, I didn't have this mouth for a while, and I got popped in the mouth. Let me tell you something, that joint hurts. You know what I'm saying? Because I feel like my parents is always just like, let's just go to the source of the problem. It's your mouth, okay? So I'm gonna just help you out. Like, like popped in the mouth, honey. So like when people say that, I'm like, I'm saying this as someone who doesn't hit their kids, and as someone who was hit as a child. You know, like it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Like, and also like I don't think it helps to like build healthy relationships with your children. I think a lot of times when I mention that, like, oh, some people say that you only have 18 summers with your children. Yeah, if you treat your children terribly, and honestly, you barely deserve that 18 summers, right? Like, there are some people who are being surprised at the fact that parents are like children are going no contact. And that's because, when they stopped needing you to survive, when they were able to have autonomy, they went to a place that was safer, and that place was not you. Right? Like if you're not modeling appropriate behavior, and it's also like, it's not really like, a sign of being able to regulate yourself, right? Because like there'll be scenarios where it's just like, okay, so my child was screaming, I asked them to stop screaming because it was stressing me out. So I hit them so they would stop screaming. And it's like, okay, so your child was screaming, which was a developmentally appropriate behavior. Like children are loud and they scream, and you couldn't regulate yourself. You couldn't think straight, and that made you mad. So out of anger, you hit your child. And I'll be real with you. To me, it sounds like you need some self-regulation before you attempt to kind of like help out your child, right? Like we regulate ourselves, and then we gift our children with self-regulation, and then we gift them with co-regulation, right? So like, yeah, you were annoyed at your child screaming because it's annoying. They never stop talking, right? But like you got so angry that you couldn't control yourself, and you expected them to control themselves. And you're what, 20, 30, 40, and you were expecting a 4, 5, 6-year-old to be able to do something that you couldn't even do? Doesn't make any sense, does it? Right? It doesn't make any sense. And also, like, how'd you feel after hitting them? Because half the time you feel like trash because you're like, I put my hands on them, you're seeing them crying, and you wouldn't let anybody else do that, right? The same way, and I see this in my relationship too, like one of the reasons why I make sure like I treat my husband with respect and talk to him with respect. I've been with him 14 years, that's my man. I wouldn't let nobody talk to him crazy. Yeah. So why would I talk to you crazy? I wouldn't let anyone put their hands on my child. So why the heck would I let you put your hands on my child? Where, like, if I wouldn't let you hit my child, why am I doing it? And children learn to model that aspect in relationship, and they learn to not be able to see outside unhealthiness because it was their norm. Oh, I'm used to being screamed at constantly as somebody who loved me the most. So yes, my partner does scream at me, and it's normal. Oh, I'm used to having someone put their hands on me because that's what I'm used to. So yes, my partner does put their hands on me. Oh, I'm used to someone not having accountability for her actions. So I'm in a relationship that's emotionally and manipulative because they don't take accountability for their actions because parents around me never did that. I've never been apologized to. I've really just had someone say, oh, let me take you to the store. So I don't know what an apology looks like. And I also don't know how to hold myself accountable to things. And now I'm dealing with issues, right? I've never had like setbacks be accepted. So now I'm deemed a perfectionist, and I give more of others than I give to myself. And my mental health and physical health is bad. All of this starts from parenting. And I feel like a lot of people will be like, there's this aspect now of people being like, they don't want to have children. Then don't. Because one, I someone who has 2 children, and I love every single ounce of them. I don't get offended by someone deciding that they don't want my life. I don't. And one of the things I hope I provide in my platform is like, I talk to you about the joys of being a human and a parent and an entrepreneur. And I talk to you about the difficulties too, because I think a lot of times people are so steeped in this aspect of like, oh, parenting is what we're supposed to do, that they don't realize that one of the reasons that so many people are treated terribly or treated difficultly is because they were forced to be parents and they never actually wanted to be. And they didn't have a choice, right? I have a choice, and I love every single ounce of my children. And that was my choice. Someone telling me that they don't want to have children, I'd typically be like, I hope you know what? I hope you're able to sustain that choice. Because it is an election error. But I hope you're able to keep that choice for yourself. But I want people from my platform to get, like, I focus on Black mental health. I focus on Black mental well-being. And one of the things I want to help people do, I want you to be able to enter into parenthood with consent. And when I say consent, not only in the aspect of being able to choose having a child, but I want you to know the peaks, and the valleys of it, right? A lot of times people gravitate towards me. They find out I'm a psychologist after they find out I'm a mom, because I talk about parenthood and stuff a lot. I'll be like, listen, my mom said that my children are thick as thieves. And I told her that makes sense because they rob me of my sanity daily. Yeah, they thick as thieves, And it's just like, I'll talk about the positive things, but I also talk about like, it's very difficult to be touched on all the time. And sometimes I, feel like trash when I take a break from myself. for like 5 minutes. The feeling goes away. But like, I tell people, like, even if you struggle with taking time for yourself, I still want you to do it. And you may feel it's difficult, but take the time, even if it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, to be able to regulate yourself. Because hitting your children because they're screaming when children are loud is because you haven't been able to regulate yourself. They're screaming so much that you can't think. They did something that scared you, and you think that, like, okay, I'm gonna, instill this into them with fear. And it's like, well, that's not helping. They scared you because you care about them so much. So now you're gonna put your hands on them and you're gonna hope that they never make that decision again. It doesn't work. You're severing the relationship with your children, and you're modeling for them that, like, I don't know. I saw this thing that's like, teach women that, love doesn't have to be like, not earned, but it doesn't have to like cost you your soul. Like, love doesn't require suffering. And I feel like it's not just a woman thing. It's a man thing. It's a non-binary Black people thing. Like, we need to learn that love doesn't require suffering. I can acknowledge the fact that my parents or my grandparents parented my mother, who parented me in a way that was all they had to give. And I can also acknowledge the fact that it still wasn't enough. I have an amazing relationship with my mother. But that's built.
She's right there with you.
Yeah, she's right there with me. That's built over time.
And I completely agree. And I think what you just said is so important. It's all good. Like, we just have to add the layers. And also, you have to hear the layers from someone you can hear them from.
Yeah.
When I listen to you, I feel so seen. I feel so comfortable, and I feel so healed, even just from this conversation. I could talk to you forever, but you got a heart out, so I'm not disrespecting your boundary. I'm not disrespecting your boundary. I do want to know, however, I ask everyone this. We have a segment called Mompreneurs Manifestation, where I ask all of our guests, what's next for you? What are you hoping comes next? And how can we help to manifest success in this endeavor for you?
What am I hoping comes next? So I'm a professor. I do a bunch of the speaking engagements. I want more speaking engagements and professional development courses. I do I train clinicians when it comes to like anti-racist and anti-oppressive care. I train educators on providing a learning space that's conducive to the mental well-being of Black youth. I do courses for parents who are parenting Black children. And I always say parenting Black children because I want to be very clear. There are plenty of people parenting Black children that are not Black, and you still need to do the work. So I never mention like Black parents. I say parenting Black children, because there are plenty of individuals who are parenting Black children and they aren't Black. So they think they're out of it. But if you have a Black child, you need to realize that, yes, it is harder to rear Black children. And that's not because of the children. That's because of the world. So like, work on changing the world and it'll be easier. And then just speaking on more stages, like I have my podcast. I think it's amazing. One of my goals for 2025 is to be able to do a commencement speech, which I think will be amazing, to be able to do a commencement speech. But just having more time to do speaking engagements and working on my courses. I teach Psych of the Black Experience. I teach hip hop, mental health, and activism. I enjoy being able to do speaking because I get to reach way more people than I would if I was teaching. So I teach and I do both. But I get to get into contact with people who came to this conference from all over the country. And then I get to just be like, oh, okay. So like, you're from Cali, you're from North Dakota, you're from New Orleans, and you guys are all going to be able to take on this amazing information and take it back with you. Like, there's nothing like it. I think it's why I love teaching so much, because all of my students are from different places. And then they go back to their, respective places and they, teach those around them, the stuff that they've learned. I feel like conferences and speaking engagements are the same thing. There's only so much access I'm going to have as like someone who's in Nashville. Because to be honest, I mostly only travel for work if I'm not hanging out with the family. Like, we have basketball.
Well, you do
practice.
Have a toddler.
Yeah,
you have a 2-year-old.
Like, we got basketball.
We're gonna give you some grace. As someone who has an almost 13-year-old and a 10-year-old, this is the time. Like, you doing more. I'm impressed.
Thank you.
I love you. You bring us so much joy, and this has been so delightful. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Tell us where everyone can find you and learn more about the work that you can do.
Yes, so I'm Raquel Martin, PhD everywhere. I try to be consistent with it. So RaquelMartinPhD.com, where you can download a bunch of my free resources. I have one about burning the cape of Black Superwoman syndrome. I have another about finding a therapist, because anyone who's looking for a therapist, You should ask for a consultation session. It's 30 minutes. I have questions that you can ask, like with over like 50 resources for directories. I also have another free resource that's like about Black identity development. I'm all about giving free game because like it's never going to be enough because most therapists are booked. So I'm always like making it rain on resources. So go to my website to download free resources. But also like Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Raquel Martin, PhD. And then I have my podcast, Mind Your Mental Podcast, which comes out weekly. But yeah, I'm everywhere, honestly. I try to be consistent. I post at least once a day with like resources, mental health. But one thing you'll get from me is whether it's in the video or in the caption, you're going to get some tips. You're going to get some prompts to ask yourself. You're going to get some next steps. Okay. Like if I'm giving you free game, do the work. Like this is half the work. Watch the video and then ask yourself the questions that are in the caption. Help yourself out. It's free.
Now, Dr. Raquel Martin, you are just a gem. We love and adore you, and everyone, she means it. Her whole existence is a bunch of free but valuable resources that you can find so many different places. Definitely listen to her Mind Your Mental podcast, read all of the resources that she has, answer the questions that she asks you, and thank you all for listening and watching Mompreneurs. Just a reminder, a brand new episode goes live each Monday on Urban One Podcast Network, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Visit Urban One Podcast to learn more. That's urban1podcast.com. Mompreneurs is brought to you by the Urban One Podcast Network and MadameNoire. Created, produced, and hosted by me, Nancy Wren. Executive produced by Sarita Wesley, Allison McGovna, and Tanya Hoffler-Moore. Produced and edited by Jiminique Miller.